Hello my dear friends, my name is Harold and welcome to The Sanctum. In this video I'd like to talk a little bit more about mediumship and the ability to open up like a receptacle to receive information. So first of all, you may notice that there are some people who begin to meditate or carry out some kind of spiritual practice and they have all sorts of experiences. They start to see things, they're talking to angels and spirits and seeing all sorts of colors and rainbows and all sorts of phantasmagoric experiences they're having. While there's another person who'll sit down and do the same practice and nothing will happen. They may reap the benefits of that particular practice, but years may go by before they have even a glimmer of an internal experience. So the reason for this is, to understand this, we need to look at what's known as ego fragmentation. And you'll see in a moment how this is connected to mediumship, but it's important to understand this idea of ego fragmentation. So we as human beings have a sense of self. This sense of self in some individuals can be very solid and grounded in who they are. And we can say then an individual has a very strong sense of self. They know who they are. Not who they are in the greater sense of the word, but they know who they are. Right? And that rigidity creates a certain kind of person. Okay. Then there are individuals whose sense of self can be fragmented in certain ways. And for that reason, there's an openness for the mind to be influenced by external energies and scenarios. So we can almost imagine it being like a scale. On this side of the scale is an individual with a very strong sense of self, and on this side of the scale is an individual who has an extremely fragmented ego or identity or fragmented sense of self. Now, an individual who's on this side of the spectrum, they're so solidly fixated in their sense of self, their experience of reality will be very solidly rooted in the physical laws. And those who move on to the other side of the spectrum, who have a very fragmented ego, they may have multiple personalities. They may be schizophrenic or live in a delusional reality in the extreme cases. Whereas those in the center, right in the center, where they're able to maintain their sense of self, but are also able to open up, to be able to let go of the self, they can open up like a receptacle to receive information from other places and other energies. So this is the scale of ego fragmentation, and each individual may fall in a different place. Now there are different practices and different things that can move you along this scale depending on where you want to be. A person who is more grounded and starts to do more solar type practices, working with energies associated with Sol or the sun, will begin to develop a stronger sense of self. Those who start to work with the lunar practices will begin to develop a movement towards a more receptive sense of self, so that they can become more of a medium, opening up to channel a particular energy. So this is the same when an individual is on a psychedelic. Not that I'm recommending doing any of that, but when a psychedelic is ingested or taken into an individual, the psychedelic begins to create a sense of ego fragmentation. This ego fragmentation leads to an openness, an increase of receptivity. The psychedelic ceremonies of, the Andes and the Amazonian rainforest and shamanic tradition are very lunar in nature. They begin to create a sense of receptivity through the use of something external. So that is one way an individual can begin to improve fragmentation in that way, to create that. But of course, if you do too much of that, or something goes wrong there, your ego could be fragmented permanently or for a longer period of time, leading to psychosis or a problem in that way. And it is for that reason taking that path could be potentially dangerous for an individual. However, there are other ways of improving receptivity. And one way is to work with reflected light. Because the reflected light is very lunar in nature. So to work with reflected light, what you want to do is you want to take a glass, like a glass bottle, and you want to place it right next to a candle so that the candle flame begins to be reflected off the glass or the glass bottle. You don't want to use plastic, you want to specifically use glass. And then you want to sit and stare at the reflected light on the glass for a certain period of time. And whenever you get distracted, you keep coming back. And you want to do this without blinking. Working with this reflected light will begin to generate lunar energy within you and create an openness to receive energy. This increase in lunar energy will begin to increase the ability for an individual to open up and channel, while maintaining their sense of self. So therefore, they don't lose themselves in the process. There are other ways as well to begin to increase fragmentation, such as exhaustion. These are extreme practices that I don't recommend unless you want to go there. But exhaustion can do that too, to the point in which you feel so tired and exhausted that you lose your sense of self. And ego fragmentation happens, and therefore channeling happens. This can also be done with spinning. Hence why if you look at the whirling dervishes in Turkey and in the Sufi tradition, they use spinning. And this sense of dizziness that leads to ego fragmentation taking place, that leads to gnosis and an opening, becoming like a receptacle for external energy or information, depending on what it is that you're doing. Another process of also creating ego fragmentation is, of course, extreme sexual excitation or sexual pleasure to a very strong degree that leads to an individual being so hyper-stimulated that they lose their sense of self and they open up like a receptacle for mediumship. So like this, there are various practices that can be employed to begin to create a receptive state of mind. Now, there's also a practice that I've talked about in a much older video, where I talk about a practice that involves dissolving yourself into emptiness and then re-emerging as a cup that is ready to receive. And this is a technique that you can use to improve your mediumship and your ability to receive and channel energy. That is what I mean by mediumship, the ability to become like a receptacle to receive and channel energy depending on what it is that you're trying to do, whether you're working with a particular deity or whether you are simply working with the quantum field or the universe in general, whether you're a tarot reader or you are doing any other form of divination, or simply you want to be able to receive an answer for a question, or channel down an idea for a new YouTube video or a book or a piece of music. This ability to step outside of yourself becomes very important, so that you can open up like a receptacle to receive this energy. So if you haven't watched that video, I recommend doing so. So you can find that video right over here or over here. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and subscribe, and I shall see you very soon. Peace.